Good day and a welcome. Matthew here again with the Manufacturers Cup. Brands Hatch in the Group 4s. So I placed my Ferrari in 8th. I had a very poor qualifying session. I was really gutted about it because I had the pace to pick up pole, especially with the pole on this one being a 28.4. So I definitely had the pace to improve and fight near the front. But I failed on my flying lap, and so I got stuck with my banker lap, and that put me down in 8th. There was some pretty tight, I think it was only a couple of tenths. I think it was 5 tenths covering the top 11 drivers, so it was pretty close. So I was going to settle in for a long, hard race. I did not expect to make much progress. It's very difficult to overtake around here. There's no stop-start corners. You're really relying on another driver to make an error ahead of you or be slower out of one of these fast corners to be able to pull up alongside, because you can't sort of get your nose in and dive somebody. There isn't those braking zones really to make really aggressive overtakes. So it can be a bit of a train, a bit of a procession. So you just have to wait for your opportunity. So I thought early on, John and the Renault is very good with this tyre wear. It's got good downforce. So I knew over the race it's going to perform better than the Ferrari. But it's very slow in a straight line. So if I could get him alone, I can mug him. I was really relying on him falling off the back of B-Spec Bob, which he did. He makes a mistake in turn 1. I go have a look. Down the inside, he does cover me off, so I can't make that move. But that, once again, slowed him up. There's now a bit of a gap between 6th and 7th. So I knew I'd have an opportunity to go down, not to go down the inside, to be able to draft him down the next straight, because he doesn't have that sort of protection by being in the next driver's draft and being able to keep speed up. So I concentrated on my exit through that left-hander. I got a good drive out of there. I started gaining on the Renault. He does open up the door, so I sail right on by, have the inside line, brake a little bit later, pull it up on the apex so I don't overshoot that corner, which is very easy to do. And I am now in 7th. And I see a bit of a train forming ahead. I can see first and second are getting a bit further out ahead. And then there's a driver in 3rd place. I think he's in the front engine, front wheel drive car. Cannot quite remember what it is. Starting to form a bit of a train. So while I knew I'd be able to catch up to the back of them, no problem at all, when one driver is drafting the back of another driver, it can be very hard to get a good run and overtake, because they're often protected by being a little bit faster down the straight than they normally are. So I wasn't too concerned about closing that gap, but I was a bit concerned about actually being able to do anything about it when I did close that gap. So coming up to the end of lap 3, you see these train of 4 cars are getting pretty close. I'm gaining on them a few tenths every sector, so I'm closing in on them pretty quick. But you see how close it is. Schnick makes a bit of an error through there, or Ranger gets a good run on him. He tries to go up the inside of the very fast right-hander, very difficult corner to overtake. And you see probably why it's so difficult, because it often ends in tears. The game blames Nick for some reason for setting somebody off, and both Schnick and Ranger fall down the order. So we'll go back and have a look at the incident from their perspective. So right on board with Ranger, who's in the McLaren and was actually at really decent pace in practice, and so from what I've seen in qualifying and so far the race, he gets a good run on Schnick, takes that right-hander quite nicely, goes up the inside of him. I guess he just wanders a little bit wide and misjudged how narrow the track was and took Schnick out. He picks up a 5-second penalty for that, and so does Nick. And I think Nick picked it up because in the middle of all that, Ranger spun sideways and Nick tapped him at the apex of the corner, and then Ranger ends up going off. So really unfortunate. Bit of a mistake on Ranger's part, and he did apologise after the race and said it was quite embarrassing. You can see why. Just a misjudgment, but it turned out to take out 3 drivers effectively from the race. So a shame for those guys, and a shame for Ranger, because he's a better driver than that for sure. But these things happen, you know. Your best intentions going into some corners and you fall off and you take somebody else out, and you don't mean to at all. I've certainly done it many times. Many times too many. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. We'll just jump back and watch it from Nick's perspective. So one more view, just on board with Nick this time. He's the one behind Ranger. Gets a nice run out of this right-hander. Not quite as good as Ranger. Ranger goes to the right. Schnick defends. Not really. Gives them the room, and then Ranger just comes across and pushes them wide. And I guess because Ranger pitched himself into Nick and then fell off the track, the game blames Nick for that one. So really unfortunately he got caught up in that and cops a penalty. Really unlucky. So with that incident, taking 2 drivers off the track, and then the third driver being Nick having to serve his penalty for 5 seconds and drop quite a while behind me. That put me into 4th place, and 2nd and 1st just around the corner, with B-Spec right ahead of me. And Huzo makes a bit of an error through turn 1, through the exit of turn 1. Spins out on his own by the looks of things, promoting myself up to 3rd, and obviously B-Spec into 2nd. So I was pretty happy coming from 8th, and just a matter of staying on the track. So far I've moved up 5 places, which is pretty tough to do at Brands Hatch. Well, it's tough to gain the places. It's very easy to lose a place around here. The track bites hard. It's a real tough circuit. It's brilliant. Like, you push the limits, and you've got to take advantage of every inch of the road. But you take an inch too much, and it very quickly bites you and spits you out, and you're in the barrier. So it's a ruthless track, and it's very tough to learn. Like, I used to be quite afraid of this track. Like, I could push the limits in time trial, but when it came to the race, I was well off from the edges. I was never on my time trial pace. But I guess over the years and doing this track enough times, I'm finally sort of managing to maximize the track with lap in, lap out with the races. So I'm pretty happy I've gotten to a state of doing that, because this track's scary when you get it wrong. And I guess 3 or 4 people have gotten it wrong, and it's gifted me 3rd place. So I spend the next few laps trying to chase down B-Spec, but I knew from practice the Honda had the legs over the Ferrari. I really needed to qualify ahead of him to have that position, because I felt if I was ahead of him, I could have held the position, but from behind, the Honda's better on tyres, or slightly better on tyres, and is better handling car than the Ferrari at this point in the race, and certainly for this track. So I had no answer for him. I was trying my best to get in his draft and make something happen, but I could not. And you see John just in the rear view mirror. He never really dropped off. When I passed him, he just kind of stuck there. And there are a few points he gets a good run on me, but the Renault is just not fast enough in a straight line to do anything about it. And Brands Hatch, the nature of the circuit, meant that I was quite easily able to hold on to that position and keep John behind me. Must be really frustrating being in a slower car designed for handling, because you just get in these situations where you just cannot do anything. You're faster. You could go a lot faster if the guy ahead of you moved out of the way, but you just can't do anything about it, because you just can't pass them down the straights, and they can just sit on the apex in the corners, and you can't get around them. The tyre wear, although reasonably high, needed to be higher for a car like the Renault or the Toyotas to be more dominant at this combo. So that was it. VLX Dinos went from lights to flag and took a great win for the BMW, followed by B-Spec Bob in the Honda and myself in the Ferrari. So unexpected. Like, going into the race, I knew I had good quali pace, or decent quali pace, and good race pace, but the quali pace was certainly stronger. So if I could qualify up ahead, and Brands Hatch is really a qualifying circuit. If you qualify well, you're in for a good race. If you qualify poorly, it's very hard to make up from a poor qualification position. So sitting in 8th, I was really disappointed with my performance. I knew I could be fighting for pole, or top 3. but then ending up, overtaking John early and then just keeping out of trouble and keeping the car between the white lines meant that I made up a few places, picked up a 3rd place, so ultimately pretty happy. To come from 8th to 3rd at Brands is pretty difficult to do, so happy with the end result. But this was race 1 of the night. I ended up doing race 2 a little bit later on, and that one I qualified 2nd with a 28 flat, 28.05 I think it was, and I got beaten by Huso by a 28.04 or 28.03 or something. He beat me by not a lot. Really frustrated with that because I was stoked with my lap. I made a mistake, but I was still stoked with my lap. And unfortunately for Huso, he actually drops at like turn 3, falls off the track. I mean, doesn't fall off the track, he just disconnects. And so I kind of take home a relatively easy win. I wasn't bothered by 2nd place. I was able to hold the speed within the car and hold it over. I think it was a Aston Martin. So he just didn't have the tyres or couldn't quite keep pace through the race. So taking a win home for Ferrari and Manufacturers was great, but there wasn't the points available in that room where they were in this room, so kind of gutted that I missed out on the qualification. But that's my error. I'm certainly noticing improvements in myself with qualifying, but still got some work to do when I had a great opportunity to take a good win and I flushed away with a average qualifying session. But that's okay. Learn, move on, take that lesson forward. But thank you all for coming along and watching. I do appreciate it. If you did like what you saw, give me a like and a subscribe. Share this with your friends and family. If you want to see these races live, you follow me on Twitch. The link is in the description below. But until next time, thank you and bye-bye.